Once upon a time, in a small English town called Millfield, there lived a young man named James. He was 25 years old and worked at a small printing shop. The job was simple and paid enough to live. But James was never happy with enough. Every day, James looked at the people around him and felt bad about himself. His friend Tom had opened a bakery on the main street. Everyone in town loved it. His neighbor William had bought a shiny new car. And their old school friend Daniel had moved to London and was working at a big company. When Daniel came back to visit, everyone gathered around him at the local pub, listening to his stories. James sat in the corner, quietly drinking his tea, feeling invisible and small. Every morning, the first thing James thought about was other people. Tom's bakery is growing. What am I doing? William has a new car. I'm still riding a bicycle. Daniel is living in London. I'm stuck in this small town. These thoughts followed him everywhere, to work, to bed, and even into his dreams. He had completely stopped living his own life. One autumn evening, James went to visit old Henry. Henry was nearly 75 years old and lived in a small cottage at the edge of town. He had spent his whole life as a simple carpenter. He was never rich or famous, but he was the happiest and most peaceful man in Millfield. People always came to him when they had troubles. James sat by the fireplace and said sadly, "Henry, Tom has his bakery. William has his car. Daniel has his big life in London. And me? I just print posters in a small shop. I feel like I am falling behind everyone." Henry said nothing for a moment. Then he stood up and said, "Come with me." He took James to a small workshop behind the cottage. He pointed to two pieces of wood on the table, one heavy oak, one light pine. Henry asked, "If I force the pine to behave like oak, what will happen?" James said, "It will break. There are different woods." Henry nodded and said softly, "And if the pine spends all its time wishing it were oak, what happens?" James was quiet. Henry placed his hand on James's shoulder. "It forgets what it is good for. Son, you're not Tom. You are not Daniel. You have your own strength, but you will never find it while you keep looking at everyone else." James walked home slowly that night. For the first time in years, he thought only about himself. He remembered that he used to love drawing. As a boy, he filled whole notebooks with sketches. He had always had a good eye for design. That was actually why he had taken the printing job. But somewhere along the way, he had stopped creating and only started comparing. That night, he found an old sketchbook under his bed, picked up a pencil, and started drawing. He drew the main street, the old church, the oak trees in the park. He drew until midnight. When he finally put the pencil down, he felt something he had not felt in a long time: genuine happiness. From that day, James slowly began to change. He put more care into his designs at the printing shop. He suggested better layouts and colors to customers. People started asking for James by name. He kept drawing every evening, and soon people around town began asking him to design wedding invitations, cafe menus, and event signs. He was not in London. He was not running a big business, but he was doing something small, real, and truly his own. One spring afternoon, old Henry passed him in the park and saw James sketching peacefully. The old man smiled and said, "There he is." James looked up and laughed. "I think I found my own wood, Henry." Comparison is a quiet thief. It steals your peace, your joy, and your direction, slowly, without you even noticing. James stayed in Millfield, in a small printing shop, doing what he loved. And he was happy in a way he had never been when he was busy watching everyone else. The moment you stop running someone else's race, you find your own path waiting for you. If you like this story, like the video, share it with someone who needs motivation. Thank you for watching.